Reddit users, what was the worst decision you saw someone else make? Story 1. Was in Yosemite doing a hike up to the top of, I think, Vernal Falls. Some kid from a large church group decided to swim at the top in the seemingly but not really calm water at the top. I saw him get swept away and taken over the edge. The water has been running over there for thousands of years, so the rocks are smooth and there's no vegetation. There's literally nothing to grab a hold of if it happened to you. Was not in the mood to see a kid die that day. Read the signs and please stay the hell out of the water like you're told. Edit for even more grim details. The body wasn't found that day. Or the next. Or the next. I spoke to a ranger, and he said that sometimes they don't get to retrieve the body until the summer, when the falls have dried up. This is because often the bodies get stuck in a current and thrown around in one area at the bottom, like they're in a washing machine. It's impossible to get to or even see them. I have no idea what's left of them after months of that. So, stay well clear. Story 2. When I was about 7 years old, I was in the car with my parents, going across the bridge from Niagara Falls, Ontario to Niagara Falls, New York. The deadly Niagara River is right below. There was quite a wait due to traffic, so we were pretty much stopped. A bunch of teenagers were goofing around, hopping out of their car and play fighting, etc. One guy hopped up on the railing of the bridge and did a handstand. It was terrifying. His friends yelled at him, and he hopped down. Then he did it again and fell over the railing to his death. Story 3. When I was in high school, I injured my knee and had 14 stitches across it from a deep gash. No crutches and I could hobble around, but no sudden movements. One of the things we would do at recess is play soccer on the field hockey ground. The goals were made of a heavy wood base, steel uprights and crossbars, no nets. I couldn't play at that time obviously, so I was standing watching and shooting the crap with some people. Every time we were there, 5 or 6 people would stand along the back frame of the hockey goals and rest their arms on the top steel crossbar. I guess they were like a makeshift net. Anyway, this day everyone was standing along the back when physics took over and the goals tipped over backwards. Everyone one bailed except for one guy who stumbled. The goals fell back and the steel crossbeam fell across his head. It bounced. I was 6 feet away and couldn't do a damn thing. I couldn't lift it. I couldn't run for help. I had to stand there. Other people lifted the goals up. Others ran for help. He was completely out, blood pouring from his nose, ears, and one of his eyes. He fractured his skull right across both sides. He eventually pulled through and was more or less fine. Did quite well in his final exams. I went to see him in the hospital because I felt like crap I couldn't help. 25 years later, I still think about it occasionally. I'm not upset or feel guilty or anything, but seeing things like that stay with you. Story 4. My family is from Buffalo, New York. My uncle visited the falls a few years back and saw a lady fall in. They had fenced off some parts that are normally accessible because of increased water flow or something like that. And the lady disregarded this, slipped, and fell in. The worst part though is that she actually managed to get up, out of the river, onto a bit of debris or a part of the water-covered path that was somehow accessible. I'm not sure, I wasn't there. She got there and stood up, and everyone watching called for her to stay where she was and wait for a rescue. She didn't listen. She fumbled around, tried to climb on the debris back to shore and slipped and fell back in. Her head was above water all the way to the edge of the falls, and my uncle and other onlookers saw her face, eyes wide open and terrified, right as she went over. She didn't make it. That will never leave him. Story 5. I had a friend ask another friend to shoot him with a blow dart. First the guy shot him in the leg, but my friend thought that was too easy. He was an overly confident Marine Reserve, so he asked him to shoot him in the side. The guy did, and it punctured his lung, though he wouldn't admit it. Then, trying to play it cool, he decided to go home, when really he was going to the hospital. We all followed him to his car, trying to convince him to let one of us drive or call an ambulance, but he just kept saying nothing was wrong. He collapsed right as he unlocked his car, and we had to call 911. He's fine, aside from his injured ego and dim wits. Story 6. Saw a rookie drinker at a house party mix Snapple with a half a glass of Everclear, thinking Everclear was a simple alcohol mixer. 20 minutes later, projectile vomit everywhere. So in a redeeming moment, a few hours later, he drunkenly got up from his sleep and decided to haphazardly mop the kitchen and went back to sleep. Story 7. I went to a party with a friend and she smoked meth. I worked in retail in college and met her there. She was really nice and we had the same sense of humor. After a few weeks, she invited me to a house party in the middle of nowhere, and it was all like all dudes in their 30s. She was dating one of them, and we were like the only girls. I wanted to leave right away because not only were the people weird, but the house was weird too. Like there were no outlet covers on the outlets, and barely any furniture, but there was a stripper pole in the living room. She drove and convinced me to stay for one drink. When I got back from the kitchen with a beer, she asked me if I wanted to smoke meth. She actually called it something else, but I didn't understand, and only figured it out after she started explaining it to me. I declined and then watched kind of in shock as she started to smoke it while her boyfriend started telling me that it wasn't as bad as people think. I ended up calling my boyfriend to come get me and walking to the main road to wait for him because I really didn't want to be near that house. The next time I saw her at work, she told me that a few hours after I had left, a guy who had been punched at the party had called the cops, and she had been too afraid to go back to her car after running from the house, so she had spent the whole night just walking around in the nearby woods. I quit like 2 months later and never saw her again, but my friend who continued to work there told me a few months after the girl was fired for smoking meth in the bathroom at work. Story 8. There was one incident in my hometown that made me want to tear my hair out. A family moved in a few years ago. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The mother was looking for work as a teacher, but there was no openings, so she worked as an aide. My mother was on the school board at the time, and she noticed that parents were complaining about the lady as she was apparently ignoring students and favoring others, getting angry when her children got bad grades from the other teachers, etc. Mom invited her to the next school board meeting to discuss the situation, and the lady went nuts. The conversation broke down into screaming, and the lady swore she would take Mom's spot on the board. Sure enough, when election sign-ups went up online, she was the only person who ran against Mom. After months of an attempted smear campaign, Mom won the election with more than 200 votes. The lady only got 5, all from her extended family. So what does the lady do? She decides to pull both of her children out of public school, as she doesn't want them corrupted by the teachers and the board. The son was a senior in high school, months away from graduation, and the daughter was in middle school. My sister was in her class, and she said the daughter screamed and kicked her mom as she dragged her out of the classroom to check her out, begging her not to do it. She left all of her stuff in her locker, and the school had to send it to them. When Mom heard the news, she was horrified and tried to talk to the family, but the father had been browbeaten by his wife and refused to put the kids back in public. It's been a couple of years since then. The mom homeschooled the kids, but the son works in the oil field and is trying to get his GED. The daughter is a complete rebel and has been arrested numerous times for drunk driving and vandalism. But the mom still has the audacity to act smug whenever someone runs into her at the grocery store. At least my children know how to live in the real world. Sure, Kathy, keep telling yourself that when you have to bail your kid out from jail. I know Reddit is pretty passionate about children, but wow, this blew up on me. For the record, yes, her name is actually Kathy. I believe she pulled them out as a way to get back at my mom, as she was her enemy since she didn't get a teaching job or her spot on the board, so she blamed her for everything. Mom didn't hate her in the slightest, but was very upset that she did this to her kids, who didn't do anything wrong. Both kids were under 18, so the son couldn't just go back on his own. Story 9. My best friend was marrying a girl just because they had a kid together. Everything was working out fine between them as friends, and their daughter, though only 3, seemed happy as well. Then they started to be friends with benefits and began dating again. Out of nowhere, they announced that they were getting married. Everyone knew this was a bad idea considering their history, and that marriage shouldn't be a thing you just try one day. Anyway, the wedding day comes, and it's your typical affair. Church, priest, gown, flower girl, cake, etc. It was an uncomfortable experience for us as his friends, since we felt it wasn't set to last between the two of them. We didn't know how right we were. 2 months in, and they're fighting almost every night. He tells me that anything will trigger a fight between them. One night it comes to a head when their fighting becomes physical. She shoves him, he shoves back, she punches him in the chin, he hits her in the left eye hard. Problem is she's petite and only 5 feet tall, meanwhile he's a 6 feet 3 inches. Former bodybuilder. She ended up calling the cops and having him arrested. She now has full custody of their daughter, and he spent 3 weeks in jail over the whole thing. So much for giving marriage a try. Story 10. The decision. Not going to work or calling in after getting into a fight with her ex-boyfriend who worked there. The consequences. Got written up by the manager, her mom, leading to a fight between them. The fight led to get quitting her job, moving out of her house, and moving in with a guy she'd known for like 2 weeks who was the reason she broke up with prior ex. Dropped out of college because she no longer had a way to get there. Lost all her savings because she was paying all the rent on this guy's 1BR apartment that they shared with his mom and his brother as well. Got pregnant by this guy, but he ended up breaking up with her because she may have cheated on him. Details still unclear. She moves back home and starts dating a convicted felon who's 7 years older than her. She was 20. She has her baby. Her mom's boyfriend offers free childcare. She goes back to work. Hey, things are looking up. Her mom's boyfriend lets the kid watch too much TV. Her mom disapproves of the convict she's dating. Another fight. She moves out again to live with the convict. She gets pregnant again 6 months after her first baby is born. Quits her job because she can't pay for childcare. She's just miserable now, and we don't talk anymore. It's worth noting that immediately before this happened, she'd stayed with me for a week and told my mom that my life was going to fall apart because I chose to. Story 11. This goddamn loser friend of mine was so desperate for attention when we were drinking, coupled with his horrid competitive attitude that's always on. He told this cute girl/mutual friend of ours to dare him to drink as much of the bottle of vodka as possible in one go. She was confused because those are some stupid words that came out of his mouth. She said, okay. What am I agreeing to? He drank like 80% of a huge bottle of vodka straight in like 10 seconds, in a desperate attempt to impress this girl. So maybe she'd be so turned on by his willingness to do everything she says that maybe she'd do him. Instead, he got yelled at for being so stupid, threw up for like 6 hours, and cried for the rest of the night. I felt bad, but he's a god-awful friend who lost my friendship, so I laugh about it now. I'm 100% certain that he's going to die either drunk, in his car going 120, on some road somewhere, or both. Story 12. A longtime friend of mine just invited a 20-year-old girl from a small Texas town to come live with him, after only knowing her for a couple of months in a long-distance hookup kind of way. He's 29, makes good money, owns a house, etc. Normally, one wouldn't have any issues except she's got a 2-year-old son who she will bring with her when they live together. He has never been around kids before and doesn't know a thing about taking care of one. She's definitely a potential gold digger. And he's desperate, lonely, and wants instant gratification. She isn't even divorced yet and doesn't have custody worked out with her soon-to-be ex-husband. Where my friend lives and where she is from is about a 4-hour drive. This is going to blow up in his face. Story 13. Hospice nurse here. We had a medical power of attorney that was a flight attendant. The patient was 103 years old and having one of the worst deaths I have seen. Moaning, yelling, thrashing in the bed. We begged for the use of the comfort meds. He said no, she can't talk, she's dying, so there's no way she's in pain. She can't say she's in pain, so she's not. He never even saw her. 2 different MDs called, and this a whole new better than them. The best we could do was have the pharmacist compound Motrin into a rectal suppository, which is a horrible thing as it doesn't absorb well that way. Better than nothing. To this day I hate that person. There was no dignity in that death. F that dude. Story 14. At the time, when my best friend went to go buy a project car about 3 hours away from where he was going to park it to work on it. This car was someone's daily, and we didn't even know how they managed to drive it the way it was. The steering rack was basically falling off, the brake rotors and pads were chewed up from having gone metal to metal so long, and the tires were bald. This thing was not road safe. Any shop worth their shit would probably never let you take this thing on the road. Still, he bought it. Not that I care, but we had to drive this thing 3 hours, and the entire time we were just anticipating total disaster. It was very cloudy, and given the condition of the tires and brakes, if it rained we were beyond hosed. I followed behind him, calling him every so often to make sure everything was alright. And we eventually made it home, started tearing into it to find that the timing belt was almost non-existent, and the engine was overfilled with oil by about 3 quarts. 90s Hondas, man. That poor car proceeded to need a lot of work. Multiple times, my friend questioned even buying the thing, and thought to just sell it and cut his losses. As for why I say at the time, well, the car ended up making an astounding recovery and runs like a dream now. And the car I helped save eventually repaid the favor, because I ended up getting in a wreck and was without a car until the insurance decided what to do with my car. My friend offers up the OL Honda, and I mained that car for a month and it never let me down. Even made an 8-hour drive down the coast just fine with 0 issues. Still runs excellent to this day, And while my friend sunk a lot of money into that car has been ridiculously reliable given the previous owner trying to kill it, and it's about to hit 300,000 miles. Seemed like a horrible decision at the time, but we gave that little car a chance, and it repaid the favor in spades. Story 15. Always late to the party, so I'm sure nobody will see this, but when I was a criminal prosecutor, one of my co-workers had a robbery with a battery case that was pretty much a purse snatching with physical contact. The victim was elderly and was the only witness, and it all happened so fast, and yada yada. It was going to be a tough case to prove, but the guy's record was bad, and the prosecutor knew it was this guy, and was not going to drop the case. And Mr. Robber fancied himself a savvy criminal, thought he could beat the case completely, and was not going to accept any plea. Prosecutor ended up offered disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor, and the time he'd already served in jail. It's the absolute lowest offer she could have made in good faith. Mind you, Mr. Robber had a terrible history, so there was no point to him preserving a clean criminal history, or anything. Sure, you could say that he was trying to assert his honest innocence, but we knew from some inadmissible evidence that it was definitely him. On jury selection day, everyone assumed Mr. Robber would plea out, get out of jail, get McDonald's, and go home to his family. I was there on another case. WL, he didn't plea out. He said basically, ready for trial, do your worst. Now, I was a prosecutor and this guy was a bad guy, but I wanted to jump up and yell, take the deal, you moron. I just could not imagine taking the risk he was taking. We are talking years of prison on the line. It made me seriously uncomfortable that someone could be so stupid and hard-headed. I think he thought that if he said ready for trial, the state would have to acknowledge that the case was tough to prove and drop it. Madam Prosecutor did not drop it. She was a fantastic prosecutor. She presented the evidence available clearly and concisely. Old lady victim was just a gem on the stand. She was confident and engendered sympathy, and never ever came across as anything but 100% believable. The other evidence corroborated her story as much as possible. The jury came back guilty in 30 minutes. Now Mr. Robber has 8 years in prison to ponder how wrong it went when he tried to keep it real. Story 16. I'm friends with an accountant I'll call Sam. His job was as an accountant, but he was also really good at obtaining funding and grants for various research activities that the company was conducting. It was an American company with a branch in Canada. The company had never accessed these grants until they hired Sam. Sam had previously spent years working for the federal government as an accountant managing these programs, and he knew exactly how and where to apply for funding. He literally obtained enough money every year to pay the entire branch's annual budget twice over. The company hires this new branch manager, and he's an absolute dick. It's a small office, and there's no real HR presence. He's harassing Sam and makes jokes about his appearance, overweight, bookish. Finally, after he's been there 2 months, he lays Sam off with a statement that, "We have enough accountants. There's no work for you." Within an hour, Sam has been snapped up by a competitor and has a severance package to boot. Another few months go by and it's tax season. We find out from Sam's former co-workers that the American head office is calling. They want to know the final dollar amount they'll be receiving in grants for the year. The new boss has no clue what they're talking about. He then tries to find someone who can do the funding applications at the last minute, and he can't. Most consultants take a percentage cut, and it takes months to assemble the details. My bookish friend Sam makes him beg, and then Sam tells him where he can shove it. The branch closed shortly afterwards, and everyone was out of a job. Story 17. A girl I know, we've been friends for 10 years now, that straight up will not do anything productive until you actually force her to. No joke. Here's one scenario. She got academically suspended from community college because she didn't attend ever. So, she wants to get her life back on track and gets a pretty decent part-time job that eventually becomes full-time. Soon, I hear that there is an opportunity where she can get a full-time scholarship to a college because her job is partnered with said college. I tell her about this, and she just goes, "Oh, I'll think about it," and then she never thinks about it. So then a few months later, I tell her that she needs to start going back to college now while she is young because if she just keeps going at this job for the next decade, she'll just become her parents. I literally wouldn't drop this opportunity that's practically begging for her to take it. She ends up getting sick of me telling her this and finally looks into it. She is now starting up college this semester. She also had me to force her in choosing a major because she just doesn't like any of them. There are 50 majors, one of them has to be for you. She also spends a good majority of the money she can save up on tattoos and concerts. I pray for her future sometimes. I love her death, but my God, I feel like she's going to never have a good life based on her decisions. Story 18. My druggy cousin, who has had 4 of her 6 kids taken away from her, with 3 different dads, tried to get back into our family's good graces. My grandma was very generous to pay rent and utilities at a small home for them, so they could move to our hometown and get jobs to take care of the 2 they had at the time. She and her husband both refused to get jobs that weren't under the table. She didn't want to lose her food stamps and pay taxes, complained constantly about the free home, and set the AC at obscene temperatures, so my grandma's bill was enormous. My legally blind grandma went over there one time to try to talk to them after they wasn't answering phone calls, and they didn't let her in and called the cops on her. My cousin has since accused just about every male in my family of sexual abuse, including my father, who was an absolute saint, beloved by all of his nieces and nephews, and dying of ALS. She went through my mom's FB friends to message them and say she was a friend of my mom's and needed money. She asked me for money when I was a broke-ass college sophomore. I saw through her shit and refused to pander to her when my family decided to give her a second, third, fourth chance. But after she essentially spit in the faces of the only people who were actually trying to help her, they all cut her off. Drugs will make you make some pretty bad decisions. Story 19. It will be buried at this point, but I was on my way home with my parents from a day out, and we were driving down a fairly steep and winding mountain road. A car passed us with all the windows open and 4 teenagers hanging out yelling and swerving around. Horseplay, you know. They disappeared down the road, but about 10 minutes later we catch up to the place where they had gone off a bridge and landed upside down in a gully. My mom was an EMT, so we stopped, and she started to climb down when the car burst into flames, like immediate fireball. We could hear the tires pop, and the screaming, which didn't end quickly. There was nothing we could do. With the way the car was wedged into the rocks, no one could get close enough to have even a chance of extricating those guys. We waited for the emergency personnel, and we were cleared to go home finally about an hour later. An hour of watching that car burn itself to ashes as people futilely tried to help. I still hear it. I still smell it. Those kids were only a few years older than me. It's been 20 or more years, and I've lived probably about double their lifetimes. Drive safely, people. Story 20. I live in New York, as does my mother. My brother was living in KY in a holler with his pregnant wife and 2 young, 1 toddler, 1 under a year-old sons. Brother decides to buy a house online sight unseen. That's not the worst decision my story is about. My mother and I go down to KY to move him to his house in PA. Get to the house, and it is in such a terrible state of disrepair that no one can live in it. Worst decision ever coming right up. My mother decides to move my brother, his wife, and kids up to New York to live with her until they can find a place. 1 week after he moves into her house, our area experiences a flood. My mom and my brother lose everything, as did we. This is not the reason the decision was the worst of her life. Fast forward 6 years now. My mom bought a 2-family house and lives on the 1st floor, while my brother, his wife, and now clan of 5 children, not to mention a cat, a huge-ass dog, and several little dogs, live on the 2nd floor. He is on disability because he has seizures, but he is able to drive because he hasn't had a seizure since 2011. Makes me wonder why he can't work. His wife works part-time and just graduated nursing school. He leeches every spare cent off of my mother that makes almost $50 an hour at her job. It's to the point that she has to borrow money from me occasionally. He has destroyed that house. You can smell his apartment from outside the building. His children are nearly feral from no one spending any time with them. He is on the computer all the time. The wife is watching TV when she is home. She doesn't have a driver's license, and my mom drives her everywhere she has to go, school/work, which makes my mom miss sleep because my SIL works evening shift and doesn't get off work till 11. Why can't my brother drive her? He destroyed the only vehicle they have that would fit all the kids, so now he can't take her anywhere unless he has a sitter. The van that my mom was still paying on broke down, and they let it sit for 2+ years in the driveway until my mom paid it off, then junked it. They took over her dead husband's Jeep, and it's a fucking mess now. I wouldn't let my dogs ride in it, it is so filthy. He has used my mom's credit to buy things he doesn't need. He feels entitled to have all the things I have, even though I work 2 jobs, and my husband works full-time/overtime to get the things we want. It's the worst thing that could have happened to my mother, and it was her own doing. She does nothing but defend him, and he plays her like a fucking fiddle. Just the other day he told me that he and his wife believe that when God wants them to stop having kids, he will stop letting her get pregnant. He has 6 total, 5 with his wife and 1 with the ex. He supports Trump and uses all his free time to listen to Republican talk radio and then spew it all over his Facebook. I can't tell you how stressed this makes me just typing it all out. Intervention won't work. She feels responsible for them. She will never not give him everything in her power to her own detriment. Story 21. Oh my God, here we go. This is going to be long, but I have been saving this story for such a thread. Bear in mind, I was poor growing up, so here was my entertainment for a solid 6 months in high school. The story of a girl I went to school with's first serious boyfriend. This girl, April, went on vacation with her family. While staying in the all-inclusive Mexican resort, it was in Puerto Vallarta. April meets Francisco. April and Francisco caught each other's eyes across the lobby of the Grand Hotel and instantly felt a strong connection to each other. Francisco asks April to go for a walk with him around the courtyard and even holds out his elbow for her to take, like in old movies. April accepts, but that's not the bad decision. That is the part of whenever April would tell the story to a different audience, she'd pause and allow for gasps and entreaties to keep going. Oh my God, that's so romantic, April. April and this guy walk around the courtyard for hours and talk and talk. By nightfall, they are certain they've found true love. This continues for the next 10 days of their vacations. Then sadly, they are forced to separate. I'll write to you. Francisco cries to April from the backseat window of his taxi cab that is bearing him away from the love of his 15-year-old life. Guys, this was in 2005. And he said, I'll write to you. Again, this was the other part of the story where April would pause dramatically to rake in all the sighs and comments about how romantic it all was. Now here's the bad decision. And it wasn't April's. It was her freaking parents. A month goes by and April is a little blue. She's lost the will to fight with her parents. She's lost the will to shop. She's actually studying without checking her computer screen every 5 minutes. Remember, this was before texting was a big thing. April wasn't exactly a student, so her parents realize something is wrong if she's trying to keep herself distracted from what's obviously upsetting her. Well, as you can guess, April misses Francisco, who really did right to her. He's become part of me, Mom and Dad, she sobs, clutching the letter to her heart. He's the one. I just know it. And yes, that is what she said because I was there when she said it. I was freaking there. We were supposed to be working on a current events project for world history. I guess April thought the Mexican vacation saga of her life counted. So you know what April's parents do? Do you know what April's parents do? Do you want to know what April's college professor and neurologist parents decide to do? They tell April to invite Francisco to live with them in their guest house. They encourage their 14-year-old daughter to invite a stranger they never met to live in their guest house. Francisco, by the way, was from Canada, originally from Mexico. We live in Los Angeles. So guess what April talks about for the next 2 weeks? World politics and what she's going to wear to the homecoming dance. I'm joking, of course. Freakin' Francisco. In fact, she talked about this mofo so much, I had a vivid picture of what he looked like before he even set foot on American soil. Remember, no Facebook and Francisco had no MySpace, so there was no way to look him up beforehand. April had gone over every last detail of their romantic 3 weeks at the resort, that I could even predict his freaking wardrobe rotation. He wore lots of shorts and polo shirts. The 2 weeks go by and Francisco is supposed to come with April to the homecoming dance. Why he doesn't have school, I don't know. I found it incredibly strange at the time, but didn't care enough to ask because I didn't want to get another 3-hour recap of Francisco's 15 years of life, which April would launch into if so provoked. So Francisco finally shows up. I'm ready. I want to purge this guy from my system. The only reason I continued to hang out with April was because I wanted to see how far this would go. Because her parents had come up with the idea of Francisco coming for a visit, none of us silly 14 and 15-year-old girls felt we could try to convince April what a horrid idea this was. Oh, we tried. Trust me. But once we realized her parents were supporting this, well, it was all up to St. Jude at that point. Finally, the day arrives. April is so restless and jumpy through the school day. I was legitimately afraid she was going to pee her pants in the middle of class. Francisco is going to come with her parents after school, and all of us are going to meet him. This day is not unlike Christmas because after so much build-up, I want to know if the Francisco I have built up in my head compares to the flesh and blood boy who unwittingly has become my entertainment for the past few weeks. At this point, I'm picturing like Ricky Martin or Enrique Iglesias by the way she keeps describing him. So imagine how I felt when I had my bets on Enrique Iglesias and Michael Cera shows up. The two of them barely have anything to say to each other once they're reunited in person. The night of the dance, they aren't even holding hands or dancing with each other. April is dancing with all of her single friends and Francisco is on his BlackBerry in the corner of the gym by the boys' bathroom. Every time we suggest April bring him over to dance with us, she snorts. So we drop it. It appears there is trouble in paradise. Well, wouldn't you know that Francisco is supposed to stay with them for the next 3 weeks?